Hello, welcome back to Shoe Dares Wins podcast, and today my guest is Becca. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So, first question, Shoe Dares Wins. Can you tell me about how you've dared and won?
So I'm going to go completely literal.
Okay.
Last year I wanted to win under 82 natural world's strongest woman, and I did.
Smashed it out of the ballpark there.
Yeah. So it was, I knew that year that was my one goal, was that I needed to win that competition. I didn't care about anything else really that year at all. Bear in mind, I was at uni as well, so I should have had definitely other priorities. But I was like, no, I got hyper-focused to the point where I was like, I had a bit of insomnia, I was waking up in the middle of the night and I was thinking, you better win. You can't not win this.
Right.
And it was really psyching me out all the time. And I had to mute everybody I was competing against on Instagram. I was completely hyper-focused. I'd go into my training sessions and I'd be like, oh God, I'm tired, I can't do this, I'm knackered. And then I'd think, but someone else might not be. They might be doing this and you're not doing it, and you need to do this, otherwise you're not going to win. And I was like, right, okay, I'll do it.
What a mindset. That's so amazing.
Basically just drilled myself into the ground completely for months, but then got there. And it's hard because I love competing, but I really put a lot of pressure on myself for that and took it so seriously that I almost lost the enjoyment. Not completely, but the first day, it was a 2-day competition. It was 4 events over the 2 days. The first day, I finished the first day with a 2-point lead. And I went back to the house that we were all sharing, and my coach was with us and a couple of my pals. They're like, how are you feeling? I was like, I don't feel good, because I'm not far enough ahead. I need to make sure that I win tomorrow. And they were like, you've got a 2-point lead. I was like, yeah, no, I don't care. This isn't good enough. I need to be better than this. So yeah, I took it just so seriously. But then that moment when I realised I'd won, it just all came together. I've never been so pleased about something in my life, thinking all that work was so worth it. It might have made me feel horrendous for months, but I'm glad I did it because I've done what I had to do there. I've done what I needed to do for myself.
So the proof's in the pudding of just putting the work in.
Yeah, 100%.
So how do you get into this world of?
It's a weird one. I started in 2019.
So quite not quite recent.
Yeah, sort of. I don't know. In my head,
I'm thinking you're a lot younger than me. So
yeah,
you were lifting at 12.
I haven't been doing it very long, but 5 years, and I already had a decent base of strength because I'm an outdoorsy person. I live on a farm sort of, so I've always had a decent level of strength and fitness and stuff. And I'd lost loads of weight in 2018. I wanted to look slim, and I was in this whole thing of I need a 6-pack. I want to be fit. I want to look all skinny and nice and stuff. I lost loads of weight, and I didn't look any different. I just looked like skinny fat because I didn't have any muscle really.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought about that at all while I was losing weight. I just thought you just keep losing weight and eventually I'll get abs. I got to 65 kilos and I still didn't have them. And I'm a tall person. I'm 5'7", 5'8", and 65 kilos just made me look like a bobblehead. I just looked crazy. So I thought I need to build muscle, so I'm going to get into bodybuilding. And I couldn't find where I needed to go for a gym, and I'd Googled and stuff, and I'd found this gym in Middlesbrough called Steel City, and they said they were a bodybuilding gym. So I'd messaged the page and I'd said, I want to come and have a chat to you because I'm looking at getting into bodybuilding. And that was probably one of the most pivotal points in my life, I will say. And I went to Middlesbrough. It's rough as out, proper rough.
Right. Okay. I can already envision.
It's above a car park. Above a car wash. So you've got to go up a flight of stairs. The music's blaring. There's no real windows. They're all just plastic, and we just take them out when it gets warm and put them back in when it's cold.
Nice.
And I walked up the stairs. I took my sister because I was terrified. And this guy was behind the desk, and he was massive, called Mick. And he was like, oh, you messaged me? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, do you want to have a little chat, come and sit on the surface? And I was looking around and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I've just done here. I've proper got myself into a situation. How do I get out of this? And I had a chat to him and he was sound. He was so nice, so just yeah, I really want you to get involved. Come and train with us. And they had a crew of lads who trained Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 till 1, religiously. Bodybuilder training, didn't matter if you were a bit poorly or anything. You came in, you did the session, and Mick taught me how to train. He told me to buy a little book, wrote all our workouts down. So every week you could go back, see what you'd done, try and do a little bit more, all that sort of stuff. Because I had no idea about any of it. Told me to start eating properly because I was just eating like little bits of rubbish. Like I wasn't eating to fuel myself. And he just took me under his wing completely and was like, yeah, let's go. Like, you want to do a bit of bodybuilding? Let's go build some mass and let's see how you get on. So I started doing it and I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. I put everything aside. Like I was working, I was doing falconry work for pest control, like Jess. And I'd go and I'd either do that before I went to the gym or I'd train and then I'd do that after I went to the gym. But that middle of the day was mine to train, nothing else. Like, it didn't matter.
What was the acceptance like at the gym? So like, I think that's really important what you said about, was it Mick?
Yeah.
It just takes one person. Like, you could have gone into that gym and like been overwhelmed and or the guy could have been like, well, you know, we don't have many women or whatever. Just takes one person, doesn't it?
Yeah. So,
but then when you started training, what was that like? Was it equally as supportive?
Yeah. I couldn't believe how supportive it was. So there's only about 3 women training in that gym at that point. Right. Like it was all men and there was only 3 women. And it's because it had this, it's an old gym, it's been there since the 80s. It's had this stigma for years that it's like a bodybuilding, like you've got to take drugs to go there, it's a men's only. And when Mick took it over, he didn't want that. He wanted to like have more women in, he wanted it to be inclusive. So when I obviously showed a bit of interest, he was like, yeah, come on, let's go. And it got to a point where we had loads, like we had quite a few girls training in the group as well. Nice. And I never had an issue. I never had an issue with anybody. I've had maybe a couple of run-ins in that gym where people have come over and been like, oh, that's not very heavy, the weight you're lifting. And like, it used to be, I used to get like really annoyed about it and be like, oh, go away, man. But I'd go and tell Mick and Mick would just be like, no, I'm not having that. Like, not having this behaviour. And I remember one guy, I'd broke my foot. I'd dropped a plate off of the leg press machine, dropped it straight under my foot and broke a metatarsal. And I was training log because I could stand still and do it. I didn't have to move my feet. And the guy came over and he's like, oh, that's not very heavy, that's not very heavy. And I turned around and I was like, who are you? Who do you think you are? I broke my foot, leave me alone. And just kicked off big time at him because I was just furious. And afterwards I thought, hey man, that was a bit too far. I'll go and tell Mick and just like let him know, and just in case that guy complains about me. I told Mick and Mick was like, I don't care. He shouldn't have said that to you. And I was like, nice one. Like, nothing I can do in this gym is wrong now. So
it's good having that support. Anyone that supports women in getting into anything and then holds up that by sticking by, that's all you need.
Yeah, 100%. He's been an integral part, I feel like, in my life and getting me into strength training, because every time I came in, he's so invested in my journey. And like when I won Natural Worlds and I went back and I said, I've won this, and I had my Steel City hoodie on and I'd gone and got all my pictures taken, and he was just buzzing. He was over the moon that I'd done it. And I was like, I've done this for the gym. Like, we've got a world champ training at this gym now, a female world champion training at this gym, and I wanted it to be like known that gym produced me. Yeah. Like, because that was like like an origin story almost.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's inspiring. Like, how many more women are going to go, right, you turned up one day, then you got to this point, let's have a go.
Yeah. Like, I remember they had a load of Atlas stones and I started just messing about with them, see how, like, because it looks fun, doesn't it? Like, Atlas, big concrete balls in a gym, you're like, what are there? I was like, I'm just going to go throw them around and see what I like. And I started doing them, and one of the lads at the gym was like, oh, you're all right at that. Like, you should have a look at Strongman comps. And I was like, oh, yeah, like, I'll go and have a look at that. Because I very quickly realised that if you want to get into bodybuilding, you really probably need to be on drugs.
Right.
So there is a good natural bodybuilding scene, but for how much size you need to put on, you're looking at years. Like, especially as a female natural, you're looking at years and years before you get to a point where it's like, I never wanted to be in bikini, which is like your first starting point in bodybuilding. I wanted to go straight into like figure or physique, but I knew to do that I was going to have at least 5 or 6 years of training under my belt if I wasn't going to take performance enhancing drugs. So at that point I was like, I'll have a go at this strongman thing. Like, this might be a bit of fun just in the interim to try and keep me like entertained training. And I started doing that, did my first competition, got the bug, and was like, this is for me. I like this way more than bodybuilding, so yeah.
But I mean, bodybuilding obviously like fantastic bodies, but then it is a show of the body. Yeah. Whereas strongman is like, it's a physical, you're going to do stuff and prove.
It's a show of strength. And I think with bodybuilding as well, obviously, you've got to be so on it with the nutrition and the diet and stuff like that. And I'm notoriously bad at dieting, notoriously bad. Like, I'm just like, I'll just stop eating instead of like sensibly diet down.
Right.
So I was like, I think as well, you've got to be really, really consistent, really, really determined for that aesthetic look. And I think the stronger I got, the less the aesthetic side bothered me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I just love being strong.
Yeah.
And it quickly became, I'm more interested in what my body can do than what it now looks like. Like, I don't really care if I look a bit chubby, like, because I'm really strong.
It's so much more, I'm seeing it more and more now. Like, I think it's, well, they talk about strength and how more important it is than, you know, anything really, especially for women, especially like postmenopausal, where your bone strength, everything starts to decrease. And there is that, like, there's nothing more appealing than being powerful.
100%. Well, it just means like you rock up to like any normal situation. Like if our lad says, oh, go and get us some like bags of cement from Yibs or something, I can go in and just shoulder him, just walk out.
Yeah.
And you'll see the boys in the shop like, what on earth? What's she doing? Or they're like, oh, do you want a hand with that? And I'm like, no, I'm all right, mate. Like, I'll be sound. And it just gives you like, I don't know, almost like a power. You're just like, like, I don't need your help, mate. Yeah. But no, because I'm also a physio student. So within this journey of strength, I decided I was doing the pest control work, and I'd retrained over COVID to do like rats and mice pest control, which like just kept us afloat because we used to do bird shows and stuff. This is a really weird story. This story just gets weirder and weirder. So we did like eagle and vulture shows at country shows during the summer, and then obviously COVID stopped that. So I retrained pest control, rats and mice and insects. Very hard to get passionate about killing things, unfortunately.
Even pests.
Yeah, it's just not, it wasn't for me, and I did it, and it was good money, and it kept us afloat over COVID. And then after sort of COVID settled down, I was like, I want a job in this. I want to be in strongman. I want to be in strength sports, but I don't want to be a coach, and I don't want to hope that I can become a professional athlete, because that's not going to happen. And like, what are my other options? Like, what can I do to add to this sport? And I thought, I quite like physio, and I've got a really good mate, Rick, who's a physio, and he does all my physio. And I'd sort of asked him a few questions, like, come and do a bit of shadowing with me, see how you feel. Did a bit of shadowing, I was like, yeah, this is for me. So I decided to go back to uni, which was a nightmare because I didn't have any A-levels or anything because I dropped out of school. So took a bit of doing, but went back to uni, and then I'm just done my second year, so on to third year next year to be a physio. My plan is to just do specific physio in strength sports. So my goal is to try and get as many women as possible, because a lot of like my assignments and stuff that I've done have revolved around women in strength sports. So like you were saying before, with like people who are menopausal and stuff like that, the benefit is huge. Like, you can lower your risk of osteoporosis, you can lower your risk of sarcopenia, loads of different things just from strength training. And it's such an under sort of looked at thing within the NHS. Like, no one really, like, if you go to a physio, they'll give you, NHS physio, they'll give you maybe a couple of exercises and stuff like that, or you got a private physio, you get a sports massage. It's not really going to do a lot. You get a physio that tells you to start strength training and pushes you to get a bit of a bug for it. It's going to make a huge difference in your life overall. So
how do you think we change that? So like, there was a period before I had kids where I was doing weights in the gym, not by any law, I'm talking like tiny weights, because my job was really physical. So like, I was sledgehammering in like pegs all day long, and I was like, I need power. So like, my right arm needed a lot of work, and I'd be going to the gym, and I had a few mates. I was at the university gym, and I had a few mates that were like, oh God, like when I go in, and it's full of rugby, and it's full of rugby students, which is kind of worse, because like, I'm like, why are they barefooted? Like, honestly, it was just atrocious. And I had a few mates that were like, oh God, I can't go into the weight section of the gym, because it's like, you don't know what you're picking up, and it is like rabbits in the headlights. And I didn't give a shit, but I didn't give a shit because I was working with men all day long. So like, a few students, I was just like,
weren't going to make a difference.
It didn't bother me. It didn't bother me if I picked up the wrong thing. But I know so many mates, and still now, that want to get into it, and they either have to go the route of getting like a personal trainer, which is really expensive.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
They don't want to just go into a gym. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. There's not always a Mick.
No. Yeah.
Do you think that is part of the problem?
100%. So I've done a lot of like research into like the barriers for strength training for women. And obviously one is just not knowing what to do and being scared of going into that male dominated environment and looking like an idiot, which is completely fair. I think the hardest part for that is that, other than just sort of sucking it up and going, or finding other females that already are in there that you can get in touch with. So I know, like, at Steel City, if people message me or I meet people, I'm like, oh, come to the gym with me. Like, come and train. Like, with Jess, she was like, oh, I want to start getting stronger. I was like, come train Steel with me. Wrote her a little program out. She goes and trains. I think she trains nearly every day now. Like,
wow.
And you just need that little, like, push. So it's difficult because you either got to find somebody or find like a group. So a lot of my mates do like women's strength training sessions. So that's starting to take off now, which is really good. Which is just like, they're usually just a women's only group where they'll try and get a lot of women into the gym, teach you how to use everything. Because once you know how to use everything and what you're sort of doing, that fear will go. Like, you can get really confident really quickly in it. Another problems are usually like time. So women, it's really interesting because women take on a lot more responsibility than men. This is scientific research, by the way. I'm not just making this up. And because of that, they feel like they don't have enough time to do stuff like that because that's for themselves, whereas they've got other responsibilities like children or work commitments, stuff like that, looking after the house. So finding that time for yourself is super important as well, because you've got to be selfish. You've got to be selfish with it, and that's what I've done.
It's a key theme that came up in yesterday's podcast, which will be the previous podcast released to this one. We talked about, and I said the word selfish needs to not have a negative connotation, because it's actually self-care, and once you look after yourself, you can then help others. So like, I realised this like 2 years ago. I had a bit of like a crazy health thing where I was like, there's loads of stuff going on, loads of tests, and in the end, it just turned out I was massively stressed. And the one thing that gets me back to like this balance is like exercise, sleep, and food. And it's so, we forget how simple it is. But you can't do all the other stuff without this like simple triangle. And you've got to be selfish. You've got to have your days where you're like, no, I'm going to the gym. Like, I've even found it now with my husband. So like, men are notoriously bad at like going out with mates and organising, so especially post kids because they're busy. And he started CrossFit. And I knew it'd be good for him because it's like, it's, you know, there's people there doing it with you, and like I have to now, I'm like, oh, you can CrossFit again. And he's like, yeah, but he loves it, and it's that buzz. And I think so many women don't get into that because it's like, well, it's time out, like you said, like you don't have the time, but when they do it,
you'll notice such a difference in just everyday life. It'll make such a massive difference. You've got, and as well, like, it's not selfish. An hour at the gym, like what, every 3-4 times a week, 4 hours of your week, it's not selfish. Like, you can definitely find that time, and if you find a local gym to you, like, go at any time. Like, loads of gyms now 24 hours as well, you can go whenever you want, like just rock up. So I think it's just, and as well, there's loads of stigma around becoming bulky. So I know this is a huge thing, because I used to think this, like, oh, I don't want to like lift weights because I'm going to look bulky. It's really hard. It's really hard to be bulky. Like, unless you're going to take loads and loads of performance enhancing drugs, like, you're probably not going to look that bulky at all. Like, I've trained now for 5 years. I don't really look like I train. I put normal clothes on and like no one would know. No one would know that I train. So
There's a misconception of...
Massively, And
I think, so Stacey, who came on the podcast, who is strength and conditioning coach for the women's under-19 England team.
Oh, amazing.
She had me in the gym, which was really interesting. She said she is adamant, and she tried to do this with me for my marathon training. She was like, yes, running, but strength. And I wish I'd listened to her more. But she said the biggest problem with the girls in the football team, especially the younger ones, is she's like, we need to do strength, and they don't want to because of the physical side of it. They're like, I don't want to get... It's like, what?
It's crazy. And I think people are scared to like push maximally as well a lot of the time. Like, I know when I've taken people in the gym, it's pushing past that fear of maximal lifting, because it's not going to make you bulky. It's not going to make, you're not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger after a couple of weeks of like training maximally. It doesn't work like that. And women are at a disadvantage anyway, because it takes so much longer for us to build muscle than it does for men because of naturally lower testosterone levels. We don't have the benefit that they're going to get. So again, unless you're going to take performance enhancing drugs, your shoulders aren't going to be massive. Your arms aren't going to be massive. Like, it just doesn't work like that. So I think that fear sort of needs to be pushed to one side by a lot of women. And as well, like, there's a whole strong not skinny thing coming out now. If you sort of build that base of muscle, you're going to look better. Like, you're going to look more athletic. And I think this is a good thing that CrossFit are doing. Like, a lot of those bigger CrossFit girls, they look amazing.
Yeah.
They look like they're beautiful. They've got muscle, but they don't look like men.
Yeah.
They don't look like boys. They don't look like they're absolutely ridiculous, like massive.
Yeah.
They look great. So I think CrossFit's doing great things for strength training, because it's pushing that, like, yeah, you can strength train. You don't have to look like a man to do it.
Yeah. There's now that, like, I try and scroll really quickly past them because I'm like, oh my God, depressing. But the high rocks, which is, I guess, a little bit.
People love high rocks at the moment.
Yeah, it's like this.
That's the new viral thing.
But it is literally like, and I think that's hard, isn't it? Because then you see they're physically fit and they're quite strong as well, because I think it's a combination of the cardio and the weights.
Yeah.
But the girls on there are not skinny runners.
No.
Which is good.
Yeah.
But then there's also, I think there's that barrier as well of like, well, I don't quite look like them yet. And you've got to start somewhere, haven't you?
Everyone's got to start somewhere.
And that's just the local gym, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. You've got to start somewhere. And, like, as well, everything, no one starts anything good. You don't start anything good. And if you do, the barrier to entry is too low.
Yeah.
Like that's the be all and end all. You need to start at the bottom. And no matter what you do, you're going to look back at it in a couple of years and be like, wow, that was embarrassing. Wow, I did stupid things back then. Like, I look at my original training and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, oh my God. I wish someone had, like, said to me, what are you doing? Like, that is crazy. But it doesn't matter, because you've just got to start. Get that bit out of the way. The sooner you start, the sooner that bit's out of the way and done, innit? So,
what has been some of the biggest, like, things for you to overcome in your training?
I don't know. I don't think I've really struggled a lot with it. I've not had, like, much adversity. I think because I went into such a supportive community at Steel City, I just assumed that was what everywhere was going to be like. And because of that, I went into everywhere, like, all the gyms that I train at now, I went in really open-minded, really friendly, and everyone was just like that back to me, because you sort of get what you give, don't you, a lot of the time. So I haven't really had any, like,
no barriers.
Adversity. No barriers or anything like that. I think cracked on.
I think that's what, like, if people just start, they'll realise that sometimes it's just in your head.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like, I think a lot of it's in your head, and you make up things to make it seem a lot worse than it's going to be. And most of the time, it's straightforward as anything.
It's just getting going.
Yeah.
So from starting this then in the gym to competing, what was that kind of like, that time scale like? And the one that you won, how many competitions had you done before that?
So I had a bit of a weird, like, journey with it, because obviously I started training and then we had lockdown.
Right.
So it stunted everything, which was annoying. But luckily, because I've got obviously a farm at home, I was like, I always wanted a home gym, because I live in the middle of nowhere. My closest gym was a gym like 8 miles down the road, just a little commercial gym on the side of a hotel. And to be fair, actually, I did have some adversity there, because the guy did a blood pressure test on me. I went in how old was I? Not very old. And he did a blood pressure test, and he's like, oh, your blood pressure's too high, you can't come in. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, I was maybe like 23, 24. I was like, you're taking the mick, mate. I know my blood pressure's fine. So yeah, I couldn't train there. And the other gyms, like Steel City for me is like 40, 45 minutes. And then my other ones in Hartlepool and stuff are about just under an hour for me. So
that's a fair trek.
I always wanted to be able to train at home. So luckily, just before lockdown, I bought a barbell and a load of plates, cheap. Because when lockdown hit, could you get gym equipment?
I was going to say, yeah, it went mental, didn't it? Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so... People were messaging me, like, offering like $2,000 for stuff I'd paid like 400 quid for. I was just like, this is insane. But I was lucky I had that. So obviously I'd booked in for competitions in 2020. They all got cancelled. So it meant that I just spent 2020 sort of training and deciding what I was going to do. And then 2021 came around and all the competitions rebooked again. I ended up doing about 3 back-to-back, like weekend after weekend, which was horrendous. Luckily, I was only a novice, so a lot of them weren't very heavy. But I did that. And then 2021, I'd decided that I was going to be like in the middleweight category, which was under 82, but I wasn't sensible enough to understand how to diet or water cut properly. So I did some horrific water cuts, which made me think I can't do this. I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm going to go into the open weight, which is the next category up. The only problem with being an open weight is I'm very small compared to the open weight women. So
really?
Your average open weight, you're looking at 6 foot plus, usually about 120 to 140 kilo body weight. So I was like, Oh no. So 2022, I was like, right, I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to be an open weight. I'm going to smash it. I did England's. I came like 8th. It wasn't very good at all. And then I qualified for official Strongman Games, World's Strongest Woman, which is an untested federation and like probably the biggest federation within Strongman at the moment. So official Strongman run most of the competitions, but they are untested. I qualified for Worlds in a competition, so I thought, right, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go to Worlds. I sort of knew I was going to do terribly. I sort of knew that it was going to be a write-off for me, but I was like, doesn't matter. It was really expensive because it was in Florida. It was a nightmare, so I'd made a load of bucket hats, and I was selling these bucket hats and had these little badges saying Get Worgan to Worlds on them, and I sold them to try and make some money to get out there, because I don't like the whole GoFundMe for hobbies. I think that's... Yeah. If it's a hobby and you want to do it, you need to find a way to do it yourself. Like, you shouldn't be begging. And I went out there. It was a nightmare again because there was a hurricane just before we went out. So me and our friends, our flight got cancelled. We then had to rebook flights. Our hotel then got cancelled. We then had to rebook the hotel. We then couldn't fly into Orlando, which was an hour away from where we were. No, it was in Daytona Worlds.
Okay.
So we went to fly into Orlando, and then we were going to get a taxi to Daytona Beach. We couldn't do that. We ended up in Miami. So we then had to rent a car.
Drive down.
Which was tricky because none of us had credit cards. Do you know how hard it is to rent a car in America without a credit card? It's nearly impossible. It was a nightmare. So this trip that I had like really well budgeted suddenly went out the window and was just a nightmare from start to finish. But it was hilarious. Like, we kept saying, like, should we just call it? And we were just like, nah, let's keep going. So me and Joe and Rachel, like my 3 mates, were just like the 3 musketeers the entire time. And I'd only met them a couple of times in the gym as well. And then all of a sudden we were going to America together. It was like, we're going to really get to know each other now. So yeah, we went out there and the competition got condensed because of the days, because we'd lost a couple of days for the hurricane. So we started competing 8:30 in the morning. We finished competing 9:30 that night. 4 events throughout that day with about like 3-4 hour gap in between each event, which was just really hard to deal with. I zeroed the first 3 events. So I tried and failed all of them.
Okay.
Did awful. 0 points in all of them. I was just like, well, I sort of knew this was going to happen. And then the last event was sandbag to shoulder. And I actually came 12th in that out of 24. So I was buzzing about that. But that was like 9:30 at night. And I was like, there's no point now. Like, I'm not going to get anywhere with it. And I think I came like 22nd out of 24. Like, I did terrible. But I was like, I needed that experience. I needed to see what it was going to be like. I needed to see that for future me to work out what I was going to do next.
When you say 20, so there was only 24 and that represents world?
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit.
So there is a lot of qualifiers, and like people had qualified, so that there's an online qualifier, and usually top 10 out of that qualify, and then they'll usually have like quite a lot of competitions in America to qualify for it, and then a few competitions maybe in the UK to qualify for it. But yeah, it's the pools just aren't very big. Like, they're getting bigger, but I mean, yeah, I think there was that year I went, there was about 400 athletes across all the weight classes. So that's like, I think it's 10 weight classes there is. Yeah, so not loads, yeah. But yeah, so I did that, and then 2023, I thought, right, I can't be an open weight because I'm not going to get anywhere with these lot now. Like, I'm not big enough, and I'm not willing to take the drugs yet, so I need to think of something else. And I thought, I'm just being lazy. I can get to under 82. I can be a middleweight. Like, I just need to cut. So I did a massive cut. I went from 94 kilos to 84 in, I think, about 10 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful. Worst time of my life. Right over Christmas as well.
Oh, no. Oh.
Yeah, it was bad. But I did it, and then that set me up for the natural pathway, which is called UKNS, and then Natural Strongman Worlds. And I did that. So I won the UK qualifier. I then won UKs, and then that's what led me to win Worlds as well that year.
Wow.
So, and then I did a couple of untested competitions. So I came second in the untested England's, and I came 4th at OSG Europe's last year.
I mean, it's astounding to me that there is still there's competitions where it's untested.
Yeah.
And that world still exists. Because, do you think there's more women are more hesitant to take the drugs, therefore a lot of women represent the untested anyway?
Well, I think strongman's a really weird world for performance enhancing drugs. it's so weird. It's so weird. It's really easily pushed on people. So you find that like a lot of girls they'll be in a gym and they'll be like, oh, I want to get a bit stronger. And someone will go, have you tried this? And they won't realise that it's like a performance enhancing drug, and that if they take that, there's all these potential side effects. They just think, oh, I'll just take this tablet and get a little bit stronger. Like,
it's not like the traditional steroids of shooting up.
Yeah, so now you can get nasal sprays, you can get tablets, you can get all sorts of stuff. Like, it's not, you don't have to inject. Like, so I think that makes the barrier for entry for it a lot lower.
Yeah.
But then that means people aren't as aware of the risks, or don't pay attention as much to the risks that it can potentially bring with it. But I think as well, like with strength sports, it's always been there.
Yeah.
It's massive. Like,
you can't just fade that out. Like.
No, it's going to take years to get it faded out. And I think even then, it's not going to work. Like, but again, I think I'm coming across a little bit like anti-peds here. I'm not anti-peds. Like, if you want to do that, that's absolutely your decision. Yeah. And as an athlete, I've never said never. I've never said, oh, I'm never going to do that at all. If the situation was right and the drive for me was right, then I would definitely do it. Like, it's one of them things, but it's risk versus reward a lot of the time for that sort of stuff. So you've just got to weigh up.
There's no like even playing field then, is there? So like if everyone is and you're not, I mean, then it's hard. That would be incredibly hard, especially if you know your performance is increasing. Yeah,
well, I think, so this is why the natural pathway that's grown, this is its 4th year this year. So it's run by a couple of my friends, Stephen Wiley, Matty Costello, and Luke Davies, who are big in the world of strongman in the promotion side of it. And they've really like just decided, we're going to create a really obvious, straightforward pathway for natural athletes to take. And it's taken a couple of years, but I mean, last year it was big. It was really, really big. And I think this year, potentially we're going to see the first year where there's actually prize money involved for like Worlds, especially. I think they're going to aim to try and get at least, even if it's just a couple of £100 for like your podium, just so that we can start pushing it forward a little bit and going, these natural athletes are like, I mean, loads of us compete as well in the untested and like do really well. Like one of my friends, Chloe Brennan, she's a natural athlete and she came 3rd last year at OSG Worlds in the under 73s. So in a completely untested competition, she managed to get 3rd in the world, which was like, we were all just like, oh my God, like it's 100% doable. It's just, you've got to play a bit of a longer game.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what's next for you then? Like,
well,
I had anywhere to go from.
No, I had a bit of a problematic start to my year because I was meant to be training for British Axle record, which I was going to do the untested record, which was currently 101 kilos set by Rhiannon Lovelace. Basically, where you get like an axle is like a barbell but a scaffolding bar, so it's thicker, so it's harder to grip, and you basically bring it up to your chest, push it overhead. And I'd hit 100 kilos a couple of times and I was like, I could probably do this record, like, let's go. And they'd set up this competition in April to do the record breakers. And as I was training for it, I ruptured my bicep.
Yeah, I saw this on Instagram and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, I knew it was a thing because it's a really common strongman injury, really common, because your biceps, the biceps in your arm, you think they're a big working muscle. They don't really do a lot. They're probably the weakest link in your arm. Your triceps are your biggest muscle in your arm. So your biceps mainly do this.
Right.
They don't help a lot with this a lot of the time. Okay. So yeah, I was just training for it, probably training a little bit too hard. I made a bit of a mistake, changed some positioning and overloaded that arm probably way too early and just, pop, off it came.
What happens when that goes?
It wasn't too bad. I think because it was like a complete tendon rupture, it wasn't that painful. I knew what I'd done. Like the minute I did it, I grabbed my arm and I thought, I know exactly what this is.
So it's when the muscle just like...
Yeah, so the tendon that attached that muscle to the arm just split in half, gone. So yeah, I went to A&E. My biggest problem was because my arms aren't very big, so it wasn't very obvious. And usually when you get a full bicep rupture, you get what's called Popeye deformity, which is where the muscle sits up like that, and there's an obvious gap.
Right.
My biceps aren't that big, so every person I went to see were like, "Oh, I don't think this is a full rupture. I think it's partial." And I was like, it's definitely full. Like, I know exactly what this is. And luckily I got an ultrasound pretty fast, but your problem is if you don't get it surgically reattached within the first sort of couple of weeks, the scar tissue builds up around it and they can't pull it back down to reattach it back to the bone. So I was super lucky and managed to get in really fast with the NHS. And yeah, they reattached it. But first time I'd had surgery, like that was my first real injury in Strongman. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the end of the road. Like, I can't believe it. I've won like Natural Worlds once and I'm already out. Like, this is horrendous. And it's a really common injury as well in people that take PEDs. So with PEDs, obviously, a lot of them only affect the muscle belly. They don't actually affect your tendons and your ligaments. So what will happen is the muscle belly will grow. It's extra pressure on that tendon because the tendon hasn't grown with the muscle. So the muscle's now much stronger than the tendon is. Leads it to rupture. And obviously I was like, this can't happen to me. My biceps aren't even that big. Like, how has this happened? Like, I'm a natural female. There's only 2 other women that I know who've had it done, who've ever like ruptured biceps. And they're like, they've been doing this sport for years and years and years. So I was put out by it, me. I was like, I can't believe this has happened. But everyone was sort of like, well, it's a bit of a rite of passage into Strongman, isn't it? Like, you've had a bicep off and now you're part of the gang. So just keep moving on from here, don't you? So yeah, that stunted my year quite a lot. And it meant that I couldn't compete in the natural UKs again. That's just been. And then I was a bit concerned about whether I'd be able to compete for Natural Worlds, which is in August. But it looks like I might be all right. So, yeah, my plan this year is I've got a competition in July called the Irish Strength Cup, which is going to be like a test run to see how my arm holds up and whether I can tolerate and I'm back to the level that I was before. And then it'll be OSG Europes, where I'm aiming for podium because I got 4th last year, and then Natural Worlds to try and defend that title again. So that's the plan.
Badass.
If it works.
Yeah, get that arm reworked. So you went into the world a little bit of commentating. How did that happen? And are you enjoying that?
Yeah, so it was literally the day after I popped my bicep off, I got a message from Rhiannon and Luke, who run like Chaos Promotions, and they've set up Chaos Live, which is a live streaming company that are live streaming a lot of their competitions that they run. And they sent me a message and they were like, oh, would you like to be a commentator for us? Because I'd done a bit at, it was Natural England's this year, so earlier in the year, it must have been about January time, I ended up on the mic. So a lot of people, I'm a bit of an idiot in Strongman, a general idiot. Like, I like talking shit, I like ripping people, like, I just like causing a bit of havoc. Because it's funny, innit? Like, it's like WWE. That's why the sport's so good. Because it's loads of shit talking, isn't it? I feel like with Strongman, people are a little bit too sensitive sometimes. So I'm here to ruin that. And I got the opportunity to go on the mic and MC a little bit of this Natural England's. And I think everyone sort of thought, yeah, she's just a dickhead. Like, don't listen to her. And then I got on the mic and I'm actually quite good. So I got, like, Rhiannon said, if you want, like, be a commentator. And I was like, yeah, I'd love this. This is going to be mint. So the day after my bicep came off, I'd, like, confirmed it all with her. And I was like, this couldn't come at a better time. Because I thought, like, I'm out now. I'm not going to be able to go to any competitions. Can't do this, can't do that. But now I'm commentating. So now I'm at every competition. Doesn't matter what one. So, yeah, I got the opportunity off them. And, I appreciate the opportunity off them so much. And it's been great. I love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, of course, some havoc, like, but
it's what it's got to be done, isn't it?
That's the point, isn't it?
I love the fact that you're, like, you found a passion and then you found other things to support that passion. So the physio aligns really close to that. The commentating aligns to it. I think it's hard, isn't it, when you find a passion that doesn't necessarily pay or is not well represented and you can't make a living out of it. You almost resent the stuff that pulls you away from that. Yeah. But you've really found this pathway that allows you to be immersed in that world, which is pretty awesome. Yeah,
and I think as well with, like, you've got to be careful with your passions, haven't you? Because if you turn your passion to work sometimes, it can ruin that passion for you. Yeah. And, like, I love being an athlete. I love training. Absolutely love it. I love competing, but competing's like a bonus part to training. Like, the actual process, like, the preparations. Like, I do 8-10 week preps going into competitions. That's what I like. Yeah. I love doing that. And I didn't want to make that into a job. Like, I treat it as a job because it's serious and I want to make sure that I'm good, but I didn't want that to be, like, the job because I knew that if that became, like, the only thing, I'd quickly be I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I'm not that interested.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to see where your journey goes, and I think there's so much more that you will achieve. And
hopefully,
thank you for sharing your story. Yeah, well, that's it. Don't wreck your biceps. Yeah, thanks for sharing your story. It's incredible. And I hope more women get into lifting and get strong.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if you're in the Northeast, find me on Instagram, send me a message, because I'm training all over the place, and like I'll happily train with you.
Let's get some strong women. So I've got a tee. Is this the right one? Yeah, this is right. So I always kind of look for like what I think represents my guest the most. She came, she saw, she conquered.
Yeah.
Pretty much says it for you. So
nice.
There's one of those tees and there's some stickers.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. I have to stick them on my water bottle. I've got a water.
I saw that. That's
bottle
massive.
stickers.
Yeah.
I drink a lot of water.